Lab 8 sampling. This is the final lab of the semester before you're turned loose on your final lab project. It's pretty detailed, so go through it with both the paper and the video. What you're going to do is create your own project in the Fantom G8. You're going to learn how to sample into it, how to edit those samples and save them. Then once you've saved samples in there, you have to lay them across the keyboard in what I've always called a key map. Roland calls it a multi-sample file. Then you'll have to save that. Then you'll have to import that into a patch and save the patch. Then you're going to take DP, create a sequence, lay in an extremely simple drum beat so we have something to listen to. You're going to sequence a MIDI performance of your samples just being played. Then you're going to print the audio of your samples in that drum track, and you're going to export a stereo file that we'll listen to in class on the 2nd. So here's part A. Lab 8. And I have a video camera directly in front of me with its microphones facing away, so hoping the audio of the capture is okay, and also that I don't accidentally hit the tripod. So the first thing we're going to do is create a project. This part is important. When you go to create, if you try to go to the internal memory, it will mess you up every time, so make sure F2 USB memory is selected, and then create your project and name it with your last name, please. This part can take quite a while, or not. You now have a new project. It'll come up in live mode with user live set 001 init live. Another thing to notice is with the volume up, local control on the keyboard is on. That's how it comes up with a new project, and you want that for everything we're going to be doing for quite a while. Now we begin sampling. There's a couple of different buttons on here. One says sampling, one says sample. Don't get confused. Sampling is over here. You press it, and then you hit F1 sampling. Input select needs to be line in left for FA22. Still mono, not mic. Line in left, mono. One annoying thing about this is that when you leave this screen and you come back, it will remember your input setting, but it'll always default to stereo, so you have to go back and set it to mono. As soon as you hit start on this, it's going to begin sampling right away, but you don't have to be in a hurry because you're going to wipe out all the stuff that's dead space. I'm just going to make 3 short samples, and I'd like you to do at least 4, preferably at least 5, just so it's not as boring for me to listen to. So here we go. Woo! Yo! Hey! Plenty good enough. There's our sample. Doesn't look like much, but there are some key commands in here. If you use the cursor keys, you can change the view. I think if you hold shift down and then hit the cursor keys, you can learn to kind of navigate through. At this point, what we need to do is to take each of these samples that you made. If you hit F7 preview, you'll hear it. Woo! Yo! And we need to make each of those its own sample. So I have found that the easiest thing to do, I'm using the left and right cursor keys to change the zoom, is to first just truncate all of the unused space before the sample, which you can cursor down to the start point and spin it. But also, if you notice this little red box right there that's got a white number 1 in it, that's the first knob over here, and it's just mapped. Anything that you're editing on the Fantom, if you see a little red box with the number 1 on it, and I'm hitting the right cursor key, get me roughly in, and then I use the silver knob to get closer. Now what we're going to do is truncate or delete all of that unused stuff. So you hit modify, it comes up with number 1, truncate, select. This part's important, overwrite. If you don't, you'll create another additional file which you don't want. Then execute, and okay, it truncates it, so now you've edited your sample so that it starts like that. Now we're at part 13, chop, and this is where you'll chop the samples up into separate files. So again, you hit F3 modify. This time you want to go 6 chop. You can cursor down, but another thing on the Fantom, you'll notice there's 6 choices, right? Look over to the right and you'll notice that the pads 1 through 6 are lit up. So if you just hit pad number 6, it selects chop for you. What you're going to do now is you're going to put an anchor point in front of each of those samples. You don't have to put an anchor in front of the very first one because since it's the first sample, it's already there. I'm using the cursor keys to change the zoom. Then doing this, you put one in there and you go add point. And then again, to your other sample. Add point. Then you press F8 execute and F7 OK. When it asks you if you want to create a sample set, you go OK. You've now created individual copies of each of those samples. They're in RAM, they have to be saved, and there's still a little editing that you should do. I find it's real good file maintenance to work as you go, so before we even start editing the individual samples in RAM, I'm going to recommend you delete the long original sample. So you're going to hit F1 sample list, and that should be, F1 should be sample list, and if not, just go back and hit the sampling button again. This is the list of samples. Cursor up to number 1, you'll see that it's longer size-wise, and then go F3 utility, delete sample. If that's not selected, cursor down to it and hit select, and then OK. So now that sample's out of memory. Then you just edit each of these. You use the cursor to come down here, you hit F8 sample edit. Here's the sample. You can change this, but instead you can come down here to end point, or you can just grab knob number 3, and let's just get rid of a bunch of this dead space. With all of that selected, hit F3 modify, 1 truncate, and instead of cursoring up, I'm just going to hit the pad number 1 that's lit up. Overwrite, always overwrite, execute, and OK. So now the entire sample is only occupying that much space. Now I want you to normalize the sample, and all you do again is hit F3 modify, look for normalize, it's 3, there it is, overwrite, execute, OK. Boom. Woo! Now the thing is, this sample is in RAM, but if you shut the power off, it would be gone. So you need to save the sample into the project. So what you do is you go to the only button on the whole thing that's red. It says write, you hit it. There's a whole bunch of different things you can write into memory. Sample should come up highlighted, select, and then name it. I'm not going to take the time to name this, but I recommend that you do, and you'll see why when you create your key map. I would name it something descriptive. You go OK, you go right, you go OK. Now you're going to do the same steps we just did for the other samples, but I want you to notice something. If you come back to sample list, which you would come to anyways in order to choose your next sample to edit, notice that the first sample used to have a little red box with a white check. That meant it had been edited but not saved. Notice that now that we've saved the sample, there's a little text icon. That means, and it's only 16 kilobyte, that means that if you turn this off and then turned it back on, the sample would still be there, ready for you to play with or edit or use, but these two would be gone. So cursor down and sample edit, and do the same thing with each. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my end here, and open it up. And it's like anything else. When you first start doing this, it's kind of awkward and slow, but after you start getting used to the key commands, it's a lot faster. So now we're going to truncate. You just go modify, truncate, overwrite, execute, OK. Boom. And then normalize, modify, normalize is 3, overwrite, execute, OK. Boom. Yo. Now you have to save it. So you go right, sample comes up, yo, you would name it. If you get lost, you can push the sample button, which is to the left of the display over here, and that will bring you back to this sample list. Now notice my second sample also has an icon showing me it's been saved, and just repeat it. Hey! I think that could start a little bit better. Hey! So I'm going to truncate that too. And then save. Save the sample. At this point, you've got a set of edited and saved samples, But you need what's called a key map. Roland calls it a multi-sample file. It's a file that specifies what samples are laid out on which keys and with what tuning. So we're now at part B, create a multi-sample file. So hit exit over here a couple of times. So you're back up here. And what you do is you cursor down to the first part, set it to user initial patch. Then you come to the left of the display and you press the patch button. Now, if you want to have an idea of what's inside here, this is basic editing stuff. If you do the group up and down, you can find some general controls for making a sound in here. But if you hit F6 Pro Edit, now you have got just an incredible sound design playground here. So in either the Pro Edit or the regular edit, you're going to hit F4 Utility, cursor down to Multi-Sample Edit, and hit Select. Notice that all of these buttons are grayed out because you don't have a multi-sample file loaded. Only F1 is lit up, so you hit that. Here's a list of files, initialized multi-sample files. So you've got the first one selected, hit Select. Now notice these are all lit up. So now you can't see my fingers, but if you press middle C and then you press, while holding that, you press an octave up, see how you can select a range of keys. If you do 5 samples, you know, take maybe an octave per sample so you can have some fun with it. So what I'm going to do is take some low keys because I've only got 3 samples. I'm going to use these keys down here. Once you have set that, then you do assign. This is when you're going to be glad you named your samples. So you select the sample that you want to put on those keys, F8 select, and now on those keys, but you can hear that the pitch is wrong. So we're now at step 32, and this is something that might be really hard to see on the video, but once you get used to it, it's easy. F5 original key, you're going to press that, and when you do, there's this tiny little downward pointing orange arrow right there in the middle of the keyboard. With the original key button pressed, you spin the silver and see it moving. So here's where it normally is. Now I'm just going to take that key range that I identified and play a note right in the middle. Listen as I move the original key. So I'm going to park that little orange arrow right about in the middle of the range. So that means I've got some lower and higher. Now you just repeat those steps. Close the original key window, play keys until you find a key that has no sample on it. Identify a range, hit assign, come down to your next sample, hit select. Play it, hit the original key and spin the silver knob till you like what you hear. That's good. And then repeat again. And we'll put them on up here. Go assign, last sample, select original key. Hey. Close. You've now created a key map that you can play, but notice here the little red box with the white check, and it's grayed out. This has not been saved. If you lost power, your samples would still be in memory on the project, but not this file. So you need to write it. So you hit the red write button, it'll come up, and I strongly suggest you change the name to at least, something. Okay, right, okay. Now this part can take a while. Sometimes this thing likes to just sit here and ponder it. Like it just did. It just took, 10 or 12 seconds. But now, notice that the little red box is no longer there. So you've written your multi-sample file now, but you need to write the patch that's playing this. So hit exit twice. And if it doesn't bring you back to this screen, just hit exit until it does. This should still be highlighted. No. It should be playing your samples. But if it's not, all you do is hit patch to the left, F4 utility, multi-sample edit will probably still be highlighted. Select that, come to the list and choose the multi-sample you wanted to use and hit select, then hit exit twice more. Now, you've got a patch in here, but again, the little red box means if I turned the knob right now and came back, let's actually do it. I accidentally turned the knob, now back. Now it's playing the piano sound again. So patch, utility menu, select, list, select. Then you write this. You hit the right button, name, and look, it comes up live set. Stop and slow down. Cursor down to patch. Select, please name your patch. I don't care what you name it. You can get creative, call it Glondarth. Okay, you go right, you go okay. So now notice, user bank number 1, patch 1 is written. So if you change that and then come back, it will too. But the live set has not been written. So if you change the live set and come back, the live set is still going to call preset number 1. So you write the live set. This time it comes up live, you hit select. And I just do this in the interest. If I was actually doing this, I would name them more descriptively so I knew what I was looking at. Now, if you turn this off or another student loaded their own project, you come back in and load your project. When you bring up live set 1, it's going to come up to your patch with your samples in it. Lab 8, Part E. This is when you use what you sampled. Make a DP file, make a drum track, name it, send it to the Integra 10. Something I recommend you do is, because the way DP deals with time formats, it can get confusing, like any DAW when you don't know it. Option, Command, T, bring this up and go. If I'm going to use measures, I would think you probably would too. Whatever you want, do that so it's all global. That will save you headaches later. Then you find a sound on the Integra that you like. I like that one. MSB is 88, LSB 64, program change is 4. So pop that in. So now if I go in and I change the Integra, come back here and hit play, and it's right back to the correct patch. And then record yourself in some drums. Okay, I got some drums. I didn't record all 32 measures like you will. Let's see, samples. I think my samples are purple today. And we'll call it, how about Oof Da. Thrill and amaze me. FG8, channel 1, and now when I hit keys on the mini log. Woo! Yo! Hey! Yep! Woo! And then just record a MIDI track, triggering those. Woo, 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 woo. Yo! Yo! Woo, woo, woo. And because I want to do a good job, that's right, y'all. Get rid of that sucker. You know, do some editing, man. So that it sounds like the way you want. Yo! 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 Then why don't you lay in a bass line unless you're a lazy wanker? All right, I put in a bass line. Yo! Yo! Frickin' Odyssey. Awesome. Lab 8, Part E, final part. For Fall 22, I'm amending it. I've stripped out a whole bunch of stuff that had been in there. So at this point, you should have a MIDI sequence with that minimum, a MIDI drum track going to the Integra with the program change and bank select commands in, and a MIDI track that is playing your samples in the FG8. I've also put in a bass sound because I liked it. What you need to do now is capture the audio for all of these. Just bear in mind which ones are mono and which ones are stereo. The Integra should be captured in stereo. The Fantom, even though it's coming in stereo, you've got mono samples. You're not doing anything with stereo in that. So you can capture the Fantom in mono, and the bass is up to you. Depends on what synth it is. This was the Odyssey, and I've already captured all this. So if you click anywhere in here, the sequence editor, and you come down here or hit Option Command E, in the left sidebar, it opens up a track selector. So here's my captures of my drum cap, my bass capture, and my samples cap. So what I'm going to do now is click over here on the mixer. Notice the track selector is now showing what's in the mixer view. So I'm going to turn all of them on. And what I'm going to do is go and, this is a track we don't need, I am going to mute, this is important, mute all your MIDI tracks. Mute the MIDI tracks. Confirm that they're muted. Then hide them. So drums MIDI is gone, oofda is gone, and bass is gone. And actually, if you notice, there's a little note icon for MIDI and a little like wave icon for audio. So you hide them from the mixer, then you do the same in the sequence editor. Drums, oofda, and bass. So now, oops, wrong one. Okay, so now I can actually hide that sidebar. So now you're going to mix this down. So this is what I suggest you do, is put in a master fader, which is Control Command M. Yeah. So now that, you double click on it, takes it to 0. I would put in a final limiter, so if you just click in this field right here, this whole thing comes up and you can go shopping. There's all kinds, and these are just the stock plugins. They're not great, but they're okay, and that's on purpose. I already know what I'm looking for, which is Masterworks Limiter, so I'm going to type in MW space LIM, Masterworks Limiter. It's kind of like an ultra maximizer. So with this, if I just hit play, I can see my peaks are about -7. So I can just take the threshold here and come to roughly, and type it in -7, and then a ceiling of -0.5. Close that. Plenty loud enough now. Now what I would do is, if you just mouse over the end, you can trim it. Same thing here. Trim it. And then if you mouse slowly over here, you'll get a crossfade icon. So you can drop a fade. There's other ways to do this, obviously. Like this. Now I'm showing you how to mix, because the next thing you're doing is your final project. So listen, this, what if you didn't want to do this? Okay, so you just get rid of all those. Instead, you could come into the master, which is awfully loud there. And if you go insert volume, anywhere I click, what you're looking at is right here. It's small. So there's your 0 dB. So if you hold control, click, hold, and drag on the cursor, you can open that up, and you could bring this over here. Now it's also snapping. No, it's not. Okay. So, all right, I've got the volume all the way down. All right, so here's roughly 2 seconds right here. So what if you could draw your own fade up to, that's about 0 right there. That's good. All right, now the thing is, and you could also do that here. You could just put in a point and drag it down, and you could change the, that's awfully abrupt. I know, I'm spending all this time to make this video for you guys, so freaking whatever, okay? Now you could, if you wanted to, you could put in some other plugins in. Let's say for your capture of your samples, if you just come over here, delay, simple like me, I don't know, analog mono delay, something simple, and here it is. And you can just go with, I don't know, slapback, and then here's your mix. Now, what if you wanted to automate these controls? You would come to that track, you would go insert, and any plugin you put in, here are the controls. So if you put the mix in, and again, you have to look here to see what your mix is. So this would be dry, and then you could make it be, 10 is all the way, so 5 is 50-50, and then you could, so you can do this with any parameter on any plugin. Now you're going to mix down. Now here's the thing with DP. It's like any other program. If you don't know it, it'll drive you freaking bonkers, okay? When you bounce tracks internally into a mix down, you can't be in this view. If you bounced this right now, you'd get the drums and the bass, but you wouldn't get the sample. You have to click on it. So what you're looking at is a sound bite, their name for a region or a clip. So far, so good. Then you just have to select all of this. You don't have to select the master track. You can just hit Command A. That'll do it. The other thing you can do is if you mouse up into the conductor track area, you'll notice that the mouse icon changes to a lasso. So if you've got a lasso, you click, hold, and just drag down and let go. It will highlight those regions completely. You're now ready to mix. Mix down, I should say. Okay? Because you could put volume automation in if you want. You hit Control J. Broadcast wave interleave is fine. AAIFF interleaved is fine. 16-bit and stereo. And you can import it or not. Let's go ahead and say add to sequence and name it. Please name your final export with your last name. Lab 8. Final. Then when you hit OK, boom, and there it is. So here's your file. Now, if you hit play right now, besides hearing all of these tracks, you're going to hear this full volume track relimited. So bypass the limiter. Hold down Option. If you hold down Option, see what happens? Changes to a finger. Click on it. It goes italic. That is now bypassed. And then click, hold, and drag all of these. So you're only hearing this. And for me, I like to know. That's what we're going to listen to in class. That is now located inside the DP session folder. There's now a new folder that's called Bounces. And it's inside there. Leave it there. That's where I'm going to look for your file. Okay, before you leave, please unmute the Mackie channels that you still have muted. And please go to the Fantom, hit Menu, Project, Load Project, and reload the AE302 init project so the person that comes in next isn't looking at your project. So that's the final regular lab assignment of the semester.